back to the mat. I'm here with Lainey again, and we're going to be working with a staple posture in yoga, and that is downward facing dog. And over the 15 plus years that I've been teaching and seeing people on the mat, I feel like down dog is often the big question mark in a yoga class, because either students and or teachers just feel like they don't really know what to do with downward dog. And I've heard it and seen it all. Oh, you need to walk your dog out. Oh, you need to push through your arms more, and rolling out the arms and doing all these different things. But the problem is, if the person's body doesn't respond to those things, that means we have to change something else. And so there is a lot of pre-warm-up that goes with down dog to really successfully, truly practice down dog in a functional, safe way. So we're going to kind of move into down dog, then we're going to go backwards to go forwards. So just stay along for the ride here, and I know by the end of this session you're going to really have a much better understanding of down dog and some solutions to help both you and or your students with this pose. All right, so Lainey's going to get into downward facing dog. And while she's in down dog, her down dog looks pretty good. So she has some very good flexibility and mobility, so poses like this aren't usually a problem for her. But let's just say she is someone that has maybe very restricted hamstrings and maybe even a very restricted lower back. Typically they end up very rounded and hunched and usually kind of stuck forward. So you, the teacher, goes, oh, okay, you need to like lengthen out your spine more. And the only problem is they don't move. So one of the things to be addressing with this type of an issue is leg length. So some of the solutions are going to be that functional calf stretch in one of the warm-up videos that you've seen in the video library, as well as some strap work with the hamstrings, calf release on the half dome. Those are all going to be vital pre-warm-ups or pre-stretches to do before down dog. Yes, there is warm-up for down dog, no matter how many times we do it in class. By lengthening and releasing the leg, especially the calf, it's going to be able to help you get the length you need in your back body. Some of the other things that we often see in downward dog are sagging into downward dog, particularly the underarm and the front ribs splay and open. This is often caused by instability in the shoulder girdle, usually an internal rotation on the arms and shoulders themselves, and lack of core awareness. So we're going to talk about some of those solutions as well here in a little bit. I know Lainey's been here a long time in down dog already. And then some of the last things too are just strength in the upper body as well. Being able to actually press out of the shoulders. Often you'll see people continuously walking their hands closer towards their feet in downward facing dog to try to be able to combat that so they don't feel like there's such a load on their upper body. And although this may be kind of an in-the-moment solution, they're really avoiding still the problem or the issue with their dog pose, so we want to be able to tackle those things. All right, so Lainey can drop to her knees here. One of the biggest things I try to educate my students on with downward facing dog is, although it's a staple posture in yoga, truth be told, it may not totally be a beginner posture. Now, what I mean by that is there's a lot of moving parts to downward facing dog, and there is some necessary prep work. You can be very strong, but if you don't have the right mobility, especially in the shoulder girdle, there's a lot of nooks and crannies that you can really cheat yourself in downward facing dog. So I'm all about kind of really confronting the body and getting our body into the right alignment, and that may mean using muscles that you have not used before, opening in areas that are very tight and very restricted. And so puppy dog, some people call this dolphin, is a great solution. This pose can be used to completely replace downward facing dog. And in my mind, in a perfect world, I would say probably 90% of your class needs puppy dog more or before than they should even be in downward facing dog. So in a class of 10, that means maybe one person really is effectively, truly in downward facing dog. How can you test that? How can you check that? Well, we're going to put Lainey in puppy dog. So one of the things I love with puppy dog is we are not going to do a fist and hand or interlacing the fingers. You not only limit the shoulder girdle, you don't offer yourself the right rotation in the shoulder socket, and that's really essential. I love, love, love using the block between the palms in a pose like puppy dog and even forearm plank, because it opens the shoulder girdle and forces us into that break the stick external rotation. where the shoulder blades are being put in their socket and we're building a really healthy, stable shoulder girdle. Now, what will happen with a pose like this is you are going to meet your restriction head on. So in downward dog, where you're able to really kind of sink into the shoulders or kind of rotate your arms to kind of wiggle around those restrictions, it's not going to happen in puppy dog. So this pose may be more challenging, but it's the right kind of challenge. So Lainey's going to take her block. She's going to lay it down on the floor like a rectangle. Her palms are going to face in on the block, and she's actually going to cup in on the block. She can place her thumbs on top if she wants. She doesn't have to. But that internal hug with the palms is going to put the shoulder socket and the humerus bone, which is your upper arm bone, in the right alignment. This is really, really, really critical. Okay, so nice deep breath in here. Exhale, she's going to lift her knees up. And as she's in puppy dog, she's going to push her forearms down into the floor like she's karate chopping the mat or cutting a thick piece of cheese and her forearm is the knife. She's going to push down, I'm going to use the word aggressively, push down aggressively, evenly from her elbow to her fingertips as she then lifts up and out of her shoulder girdle. So what should happen is if she has maybe like a catch in her shoulder or a tight shoulder, she's definitely going to notice that restriction. If she's really, really loosey-goosey, it's going to force her into good stability. And so her shoulder girdle now is almost acting like her pelvis, very steady and stable, like you'd stand in mountain pose or in tree pose. We want to keep that healthy stability moving up and out of the shoulder girdle. So as she pushes down through her forearms, she's simultaneously lifting her shoulders up away from her ears and really hollowing her belly in towards her tailbone. So she's using her core strength, almost kind of like doubled over strength, to really exhale, nourish the organs to move her body weight up and back. Now, just like downward facing dog, if the hamstrings and the calves are restricted, bend your knees. Whoever said this is a modification is crazy. This is not a modification. This is a variation to help you use the right muscles. So even if she had her knees bent, she can still really press her heels into the floor to get that Achilles length, to get that calf length that she needs, that's a part of downward facing dog, without sacrificing her spine and the integrity of the back muscles. So I love, love, love this pose. I want you to really give it your go with puppy dog and try to sprinkle it into your practice. Maybe try eliminating down dog altogether and just practice puppy dog. You will be amazed at the transformation that you gain from your upper body. I have a shoulder issue on my right side that I've been nursing with for quite some time after having kids and carrying them. It's definitely taken a toll on my body. And puppy dog is the one pose that I can really get into that space and usually get rid of that catch and that kind of snag and really gain some relief without overstretching. So stability is definitely present here. All right, we'll give Lainey a break. And take a moment for yourself here, take a breath. Awesome. So when it comes to puppy dog, this can be a prep warm-up pose all on its own to help open up the shoulders, to help bring more strength to the shoulder girdle, to the core. This is also a pre-downward facing dog pose. Never thought about prepping or warming up for down dog. Many haven't. But yet we warm up for poses like Warrior 3, for handstand. We even warm up for seated forward bends. Why aren't we warming up for a pose like down dog? An incredibly complex posture deserves some extra nurturing for a lot better success. Okay, so Lainey's worked with now puppy dog for quite some time, and now she's going to come back into downward facing dog. So when she comes into downward facing dog, I'll give you a second here, Lainey. She's going to, first of all, pay attention to her arms. So she has done a great job of spreading her fingers really wide, okay? Open up your hand. You have this great big hand. Let's use it. And keeping her palms planted, she's going to externally rotate from her shoulder sockets, her arms, so the folds of her elbows point forward. Now, if you haven't noticed through the video sequencing so far in this library, Lainey does have a little bit more mobile joints. So her challenge, when she externally rotates and turns the folds of her elbows forward, is she has to actually give a little bend to her elbows because she does have that kind of in the opposite direction. Some people call it hyperextension. that hypermobility in the joint. So she has to learn to back off a little bit so her joint stays in alignment. So that's going to be a challenge for her and probably for some of your other students or maybe even yourself. But please do not be discouraged. This is definitely something that can be nurtured. It's just going to take some time, some energy, and some effort. Okay, so palms are nice and open, fingertips are nice and wide, and now you may have students that are complaining about wrist strain. Now, the last time I checked, we do very little extension through the wrist. Most of the times we're flexing, texting on a computer, things like that. So there's a stretch here, okay? There's a stretch that's happening here. Don't be misguided. We forget about that, okay? So once she's had that external rotation, it's the same rotation that your puppy dog was not letting you avoid, okay? That's the key. Puppy dog makes you do the right alignment in your upper body, okay? So she's going to create a memory from that puppy dog. She's going to keep that external rotation. Her upper shoulder girdle is broad. And now I'm actually going to have her keep her knees bent at 90. So when she lifts her knees, her belly and her thighs are going to kind of come right together. So exhale, she's going to lift up and back into down dog, but keep her knees really, really bent. So as she does that, I call this bent knee dog. And what it does is it really emphasizes a lot of shoulder length, a lot of spinal length, and we're kind of taking the legs out of the picture. Now, not entirely, but we're really working now the lower leg in a slightly different way. Even though her knees are bent, she can still really press her heels down without straightening her legs. So she's getting the calf length, she's getting the Achilles length, but most importantly, she's getting that really, really important spinal length. Okay, so if when someone pushes their legs straight, their whole body pushes forward, they need to have bent knees. Really, really important. And they will still benefit from the posture with their lower body, I promise you. Okay, so her down dog's looking pretty great. While she's in downward facing dog, let's say she does let the legs lengthen up a little bit. She can go there, okay? We've often been taught the cue, press your quads into your hamstrings and your shins into your heels, to kind of give this like up and back pull. What I want you to think about, think back to the Tadasana video, and there's that external rotation that's happening on the legs from the hip socket. I want you to think about doing that in downward facing dog. So just that little bit of external spindle without turning the feet should change how you push down through the heels so that the inside of the ankle is not collapsing and splatting towards the floor. The inside of the calf is not collapsing towards the mat. This is something that a lot of people overlook, or they see it and they don't know how to fix it. And that has to happen from that external rotation from the hip socket, and essentially those lower leg bones are also turning to give you that lift again. So when you push down through the heels, you're not just collapsing into the overstretched tissue. You're really working through those more restrictive areas and then nurturing and building strength in the arch and in the inner ankle. Really important place to look. Okay, so Lainey will give her a break here. She'll drop to her knees, take a breath. So the next thing I'm going to have you look at now is what do we do with some adjustments with downward facing dog. Now, I follow a philosophy with adjusting that there is absolutely no need to be aggressive on people. So it's really about letting their tissues go where they can take them. That way you don't take someone deeper than what they're capable of doing, and you don't end up damaging those tissues. But one thing that you can do in downward facing dog is give some kind of almost therapeutic, now I use that word cautiously, therapeutic or relieving kind of nurturing movements or assistance just to help them feel a different experience in downward facing dog. So I'm going to have Lainey come into downward dog again. She's a real trooper here. I'm going to start down by the hands, since the hands are kind of like the feet for downward facing dog. Now, I'm just either up right in front of her shoulders or off to the side. Now, I could just gently step on the insides of her hands, kind of where the thumb and the pointer finger are anchored. Sorry, my toes are a little cold. And I'm going to take my hands right where her deltoid meets her bicep, offer her a little external rotation, hold that, and then press up through the shoulders, so really press up and back. Awesome. Now, if your student is like you do that and they don't move, back to puppy dog you go. Okay, so I'm gently stepping on her feet. I'm going to find the top of her pelvis, my thumbs to her sacrum, and just give her a little push up and back. This is just a nice little stretch, a little relief, okay? And then as I let go, my thumbs are the last to lift, I'm just going to assist her in that extra little length. Maybe even just give her a little hand stroke all the way up the spine. Oftentimes people are bringing a lot of tension into the neck, so just kind of reminding them to relax the head between the arms is a really easy, simple solution. Again, another nice, just fun release or assistance is standing behind your student. You're going to cross your arms, grab for the opposite quads, and then just gently pull back as you pull the legs in. So it's just a gentle little stretch, keeping the palms planted so they're not walking the hands with. And then that final little assistance is grabbing at the hip folds, and again, just gently drawing back, just offering a gentle release, and then really asking them to use their core to keep them up and back. One of probably the most common adjustments that I do use in downward facing dog is for rib splaying. So for the people that are lacking that core and upper back stability, their front rib cage kind of pokes out. So with a closed fist, I usually just bring my forearm underneath the rib cage and kind of smooth the ribs back up again, and then take my forearm up into their hip folds, kind of right across the front of their pelvis, and kind of just pull up and back just a little bit more. Just more as a reminder, like, hey, your body's supposed to go in this direction. And that's probably the most effective adjustment that I do, that most people need because they just don't have the stability here. And what does that mean? Back to puppy dog. Okay, so we'll give Lainey a break. She's going to drop to her knees. Some of the other things that you can think about with downward facing dog that may also need to be addressed is wrists. So going back to some of those wrist stretches that we've done, you can look in the warm-up or the extras category in the Asana Video Library to look at some of those wrist stretches. Some of the things you might want to look at is people with carpal tunnel or arthritis. They may need props. We use the Grippets. Those work really great. A temporary relief, rolling the mat and bringing the hands onto that roll may also assist with that. I'm also very cautious with using tools like this, as I try to remind students that it's temporary. We want to get them to that place to break up some of that tension, okay? Some of those fascial snags, get rid of that inflammation so that they can work through their hands a little bit more productively. So again, this is just a temporary solution. It's not going to be a long-term fix. We want to take the time to prep the pose necessary. Okay, so let's recap, because down dog is a really heavy pose. First and foremost, puppy dog. Great pose to get your students in, and I promise you, even your strongest students, even your students that say, oh gosh, this is way too easy, will find that puppy dog is a really great pose, that there is no escaping the muscles that you need to be using. It forces you to stay in the posture effectively and stay exactly where you need to. Secondly, once you've worked with that puppy dog, remember, think about the lower body. Do they need to do the half dome calf stretch? Do they need to do functional warrior, some strap work, some forward bending? What is it that you need to do to prep the lower body? Because even if you walk your dog in downward facing dog, sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes they need even more pre-work because they can't even get into the shape of downward dog. So we need to step back and really ask ourselves, what are we doing in this posture? What is the goal of this posture? Down dog, first and foremost goal is to lengthen the spine. If I had to choose a second, I would say restructure the shoulder girdle. If I had to choose a third, I would say lengthen the legs, because there's so many other poses that you can use as a forerunner for lengthening the legs than downward facing dog. I would say that would be the third and final maybe focal point of that pose. Okay, so now the next step is to practice this posture. Practice it at home with yourself, practice it on your students if you're a teacher, and please, please, please integrate puppy dog into your regimen, and I promise you it will change your practice and your experience. Great job.